Hi, Jeremias. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well and happy to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a while. When it was such a great time visiting you at the St. Georgenberg now, one month ago, and I'm honored to have you here at our Manuel Series today, where we want to talk about typical challenges that people face and how they solve it, especially challenges for in management or HR management. And I'm glad that you agreed to talk about one challenge that you face. So today the topic is going to be change. But before we dive into the topic, can you tell a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Jeremias Schroeder. I'm a Benedictine monk, and I'm the Abbot President of a congregation. That means a religious order that has about 1,000 monks living in 50 monasteries spread over 4 continents and 20 countries.
Wow, that sounds... Yeah, you wanted to say something?
No, it's okay.
It's okay. It sounds like a very international organization. Is it fair to say that you are something like an elected CEO of these 1,000 monks?
I'm certainly elected. It's not entirely true because these monks belong to local units that have their own CEOs, their abbots. And okay. I'm more like a general coordinator, and I'm responsible for cohesion of the entire organization and to accompany communities that have difficulties, that are in difficult transitions, that need some outside intervention that normally then lands on my desk. Whereas ordinarily they should be able to manage all their matters themselves.
Okay, so you're like a consultant, like an internal consultant.
I'm like an internal consultant. I'm also a supervisor and an emergency fixer. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And now today we discussed before that we wanted to focus on one particular challenge you supported in your congregation that was in regard of change, where my understanding is you supported one of your, how you say, monasteries, one monastery of your congregation in coping with the change or changing location. So changing the monastery from Viecht, I understand, in Austria, to the St. Georgenberg, where you are located right now.
The challenge was that this monastery had become too big, an old pile, a 300-year-old Baroque monastery, and a relatively small and aged community could no longer fill that with life. And they were really going to crash. That was quite visible from outside. They were not going to be able to keep up life in that place much longer. And so the challenge was to find a way of giving up that big old pile and move to another place that would be more conducive for proper monastic life, suitable and fit for a community of that size.
Okay, and what would you say was the main challenge when in this regard, when thinking of this project or this change?
I would say that the main challenge really was to implement the necessary steps. The steps were in a way quite obvious if you looked from outside, but to implement them in such a way that the community was really on board, not just supporting it or accepting it, but really still having agency, being the ones in the driving seat, being the ones who make the decisions, and so that they don't lose their dignity as a monastic community, whom we normally credit with autonomy. They should be able to manage their own affairs. And so not to come in and just dictate this is how it should be done, but rather find a way of walking together with them to come to the optimum final result.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because I guess one of our listeners or some of our listeners experience exactly the situation where in some cases, in some change cases, change is dictated. And in some cases, change is also created or, more done in a collaborative approach. And when now hearing your story, it sounds like that you really focused on this collaborative approach, like taking your fellow monks with you on the journey or focusing on them having agency. How did you do this? How did you solve this challenge to create this sense of agency?
I would say a very important feature was patience. Even though the the outcome was in a way quite obvious if you were looking from outside, to take the time, walk them through an analysis that enables them to see why this is inevitable or almost inevitable, and even explore alternatives, have enough time and generosity of spirit to say, okay, now we know already we're going to walk away from here, but where are we going to go? What are the possible alternatives? And take time over that. Also, you need that time, you need that patience for emotional processing. I mean, they were giving up a home that had been a home for this community for 300 years.
Wow.
And we Benedictines, we really think in centuries, and history means a lot to us. And so having to give that up, they needed to be able to grieve even over this, of leaving this behind, and really to have the time for that. I'm one, I like quick solutions. I see where things are going, 1, 2, 3, let's move forward. And I really had to control myself and be slow down, and allow the empathy to play out that was needed for processing these steps on an emotional level as well as an intellectual and administrative level, and make so that they could really be the ones dictating the pace of the change and the transformation.
Okay, and somehow more concretely, what did you do? How did you do this?
I came in for a period of about 2.5 years. I came in quite regularly, maybe every 2 months or so, for meeting with the community. Getting in some outside advice also, who would report back to the community, help them to explore the options, but also keeping the pace steady, because there was also real danger of moving forward and backward, of dithering, of starting to doubt the process and restart again. And in those moments, to stabilize the positive forces within the community that saw where this would be going, and encourage them to really move forward rather than to get distracted by these other tendencies that would have been very disruptive for the process. But all that done sort of in kindness and with patience over an extended period of time.
So you really steadily you've been with them every 2 months. You went with them along the way to support them in this change journey. And it's interesting, I think, for many also HR colleagues out there, because it sounds familiar in a way. Of course, in most of organizations, we're not talking about 300 years, but maybe a shorter period. But in the end, I imagine it's kind of the same, to really listen to people and support them in this change process with empathy, but at the same time giving them direction so that they don't distract or on the way.
I suppose it's also a matter of the culture of an organization, and I can imagine that there are organizations that are very much used to a top-down imposition of goals and steps and so on. But that's very much not the Benedictine structure, where these local communities have a lot of autonomy. And if you don't carry, and the contraries are always there, you can't get rid of them, they are together for life. So you really have to carry them along, otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah. And what would you say was the result? So you've been there 2.5 years, every 2 months. You supported them in the journey. You gave them direction. What was the result? What came out?
Forgive me, I'm a Catholic, and I have to say the result was almost a miracle. I think some of it had to do with decent work that some confreres and myself we put in. But the final result is so much more than the sum of a few good decisions. We moved to a smaller place that has a lot of flair, that's very suggestive, beautiful, attractive to visitors, meaningful to the region here as well as to the local church. And we've been given a new lease of life. Younger people have now been attracted. We start receiving candidates again, people who want to join monastic life. So what seemed to be like a dying community that needed to adapt for circumstances of decrepitude is now suddenly again a very lively place that really attracts people and leaves a mark here in the zone. And that goes beyond what I was even able to expect and hope for. I really have to say, that's why I call it a miracle. That which we could plan worked out well. But beyond that, there is now almost like a moment of grace. It really enabled vitality, a refound vitality for this monastery that allows us to look at maybe a few more centuries of history.
Wow. I've been there. I've been at the place. I've been at St. Georgenberg. I can only underline what you've said. It feels like you can feel this spirit up there and this change. And hopefully the story goes on, and this, as you said, how many centuries? For the next centuries to come.
We'll see. The future is in God's hands, but right now I'm quite confident that this can still work out for very long time.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeremias, for sharing this story. for everybody out there, as always, you can comment or write us a message. I'm happy to hear your thoughts about how change works in your organization. And yeah, greetings to the St. Georgenberg, Jeremias. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot for the interview. I hope people learn something and like it, and we love to have visitors here. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremias. Bye.